Elections make a fundamental contribution to democratic governance, and all citizens have a constitutional right to participate in democratic processes in their country. This right begins with your right to vote for your leaders. Join Action Namibia Coalition members on Shippy FM, Kunene Radio, Ochi FM, OFM, Omaheke Radio, Nast FM, Rapids FM, 99 FM, and Kota FM, as we zoom in on access to information and elections during the month of October. Don't be left out. Tune in.
Right, don't be left out. Tune in. Time exactly 12 minutes gone past 4, and I did say I will be introducing Mr. Frederico once more. Mr. Frederico, good afternoon. How has it been? How's it going there in Windhoek?
It's interesting.
I understand there was a march against impunity. Were you present there?
Yes, I was part of that march. It's an international day against impunity for crimes committed against journalists, and we had a silent march and in the city center this morning to sort of mark the day in solidarity with journalists and media practitioners around the world.
Yeah. So I could see the pictures, and it was really, really wonderful to see from the other side people standing up and just raising their concerns against this issue. But of course, today we are talking access to information, and we are talking elections. Maybe before we get deep into that, I would just like to know, since the Action Namibia Coalition group with NMT and the other stakeholders that are involved, how has this program what is the response been so far with regards to you being in connection with the local radio station? How is this program? What is the response rate so far?
I think, if I taking what some of my other colleagues are saying within the coalition, the engagements are really valuable and interesting. And perspectives for us are, it's good to have this grassroots discussions and conversations and hear from people at local levels and so on, and away from sort of the center, from Windhoek. So it's good for us to be out there and talking, preaching the message of access to information, democracy, freedom of expression, human rights. That's what it's about, and I think it's valuable. I'll throw the question back at you. How have your listeners responded to these sessions that we are having?
No, pretty much we do have an interesting way of how our listeners respond to our programming. So, I would say I would want to say it's positive, but looking at it from my side, I'm really, really happy, and I do speak to people from the Action. I'm mostly speaking to Emily, and I'm for this. It goes as deeper as on a personal level, because I'd like to know. I'd like people knowing what they need to know, arming themselves with the knowledge that they want to that they need to have, so that they, whenever they go to an office or wherever they go, they are equipped with what they're supposed to do and what their rights are and all of that. So I would say from our side, it's positive. It's positive. It has to be positive.
Yeah, and that's what this is about. It's about having a positive effect. ATI is a positive, cause, access to information, and especially, we're moving closer to elections now. This month, this is when access to information really becomes, or should be meaningful, because this is when people start wondering about the questions and wanting answers to the issues that affect them in their daily lives, the bread and butter issues at grassroots levels. So this is where access to information should really touch sort of the local grassroots nerve at this time.
Maybe we just start now. Why should citizens exercise their rights to vote?
It is your duty in a democratic society to cast your vote, because that's how you hold those who represent you in decision making at decision making levels, both local, regional, and national. That's how you hold them accountable. By casting your vote, you either endorse their performance, the previous performance, or you are saying that you want something new. You don't believe that those whom you voted for before have delivered, and now you're taking your vote somewhere else to show how you feel about performance, decision-making performance, and executive performance. So it's important because it's about the governance of the country, and not just at national level, but it's about governance at local level. It's about service delivery at local, at regional, and national levels, and that's why it's important.
So,
and of course, yes, your vote is your voice. That's your freedom of expression in a democracy at work.
If we link it now to the access to information program and the concept itself, how can now access of information help the citizen to cast informed votes, and not just necessarily just because my mother has always been doing this? And some youth actually, what they do is some of them exercise their right to vote, but then what they do is it's on the not on the instruction, but it's per culture. Said no, my mom told me to vote. If my mom tells me to vote, that means I must go and vote for just party A or party B. So maybe how important or how can the concept of access to information help citizens cast informed votes?
Look, I mean, and you said it there. It's about being informed about the issues. And not just, I mean, this particular election that we're facing now in November, these are the regional and local elections. So these elections speak to governance, to service delivery at local and regional levels. And I mean, access to information in this context is about what you know about governance performance at your local level, at your regional level, and how you assess that. And people, ideally should vote on what they know is happening, or what they know is not happening, what they, what the information tells them are the issues with governance at their local levels, at their regional levels, and that should inform the choices we make in the voting booth. So that's what it's about, being informed about the situation at your ground level. Are your local authority councillors, are they delivering on promises of water provision, on sanitation, on housing, on keeping your locality clean and healthy, and ensuring that people are safe, that law and order is being maintained, that sort of thing. The things that actually play a role in people's lives. What do you know about that situation, about your situation at that level? And what would you like to know? And what is it that you feel you are not being, you're not getting the information to? And that itself is a political issue in the context of elections such as these that are coming up.
Mr. Frederico, what do you say to the youth out there? Because mostly the youth, some of them go like they speak like, I'm I know someone of who I spoke to last year. Now this was the time of the presidential election, and the gentleman just told me. I asked him, "Are you going to vote?" No, I'm not going to vote. Why? Because I don't think my vote will count. How does such kind of talk? How do we maybe motivate people like that to vote?
Yeah, I mean that's a difficult question, because I mean this is not just a Namibian issue. This is an issue of young people around the world where they feel that the democratic processes aren't working for them. Elections aren't delivering the sort of results that they think they should be delivering. But what else is there? And people have to, I mean, if you think that your vote and the vote of, your friends and the handful of you is not making a difference, perhaps then that's your entry point to become a local level activist, to a community activist, to advocate for the sort of change that you want to see, and then to possibly start a ground level initiative or movement that speaks to the issues that people are demoralized about at local levels, and then try and do something instead of turning your back on a process which is very important in a democracy. And I can guarantee you that not voting has an impact, because it empowers whoever. It counts again. It counts in the favor of whoever is voting and whoever is campaigning, and it counts in favor of against those who want to see change brought. Because now you're not turning out to cast that vote, which could be the deciding vote. A handful of votes, for instance, in a locality, in a small local authority section, a handful of votes could make the difference. So, I mean, to think that your vote doesn't count, doesn't have an impact. It does. Every single vote has, every single person's choice has an impact. And of course, I mean, counted with all the others, the thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of votes, that impact is amplified. But in order to have an impact, you have to go and make that cross in the voting booth.
Moving on, before Mr. Frederico, before we continue with the Constitution, with regards to what the Constitution say about elections, I would just like to know how important is it for every citizen out there to, whatever it is that you do in your life, to equip themselves with the necessary information with regards to the Constitution itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's critical that all of us understand what the foundational document, sort of the principles we as a society live by, and that is the social contract between us as citizens and the state, what it actually says, because this informs important parts of our lives, personal and professional and as social beings. So it's important that people understand and actually know what the Constitution says, in terms, not just in terms of their rights, but in terms of what it is that government is, and what it should be doing for you as a citizen, and what your responsibilities are towards the state. It's not just a one-way thing. It's a two-way relationship. And the state is us, the citizens, and we are the state. So we have to take responsibility for the nature of our state, for the nature of our governments, because that impacts on our lives. especially in times such as these. I mean, if we take the COVID-19 era that we are in, where you see how significant it is that the state actually works for the people, in terms of provision of healthcare, in terms of provision of sanitation and housing and food, and so there's so many areas that the state has a role to play, that and that relies on us knowing and holding the state accountable for that delivery, through the provision of information, and that's why it's important. That's why we should know what it is that the foundational document says, the Constitution of the Republic of Namibia, about that relationship between me as a citizen, and my relationship with the state, the Namibian state.
Mm-hmm. And that is why it is very, very important, if you are listening, to just get yourself a constitution, the book, the constitution book, and just acquaint yourself with the knowledge that is there, and the information, of course. Okay, now what does the constitution say about elections, Mr. Frederico?
Well, I mean, the constitution has various sections in there that speak to elections. Chapter 10 B makes provision for the Electoral Commission, and then there are various sections that speak to the election of the president and the elections of regional governors and the governments and local authorities. So there are various sections, and this is where, I mean, Chapter 12, regional and local government. This is where, at this point in time, people should really take an interest in what does the Constitution say about, from Article 102 through to 111, which is local authorities. What does it say about how local authorities should be governed, and what sort of impact as a citizen I should be having on local authorities, in terms of exercising my right to vote. So in terms of the Constitution also, I mean, every citizen over the age of 18, and this is in conjunction with the Electoral Act of 2014, every citizen over the 18 has the right to vote. So you should read the Constitution in conjunction with the Electoral Act. And that sort of gives you, and these documents are available online. So it's not that people have to go out and try and get a book. If you have an internet connection that you can share with other people and give them exposure to these online documents. If you just Google, for instance, Namibian Constitution, links to the Constitution should come up. If you Google Electoral Act, it should come up. These don't take a lot of data, and then you can share this information with others about what it is that the Constitution says about elections at local, at regional, at national level, in the presidential electoral context, and then share that information and why it's important, because this is how we build accountability. This is how we build transparency at local levels, in our lives, at our levels of government that we interact with. So, I mean, I would encourage people to really get to know the Constitution and the constitutional articles that speak to elections, especially the elections at local level and the elections at regional level. Which are the government levels which most closely most people interact with on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. And now, how can the citizens impact governance through democratic processes?
Look, I mean, the citizen, the state has a responsibility towards the citizen. And the state is created for the citizen. to deliver service, to enable the citizen to live out his potential by setting an enabling environment. Elections are a significant part of democratic processes. It's a very significant democratic process. But people also need to understand that democracy isn't about just voting every 5 years. Mm-hmm. Democracy is also about what we do between elections. So now we've voted for people for representation at local or regional or national level. Between those elections, as citizens of a democracy, we have a responsibility to hold those that we have elected. We have a responsibility to hold them accountable and to demand as citizens, as voters, that they deliver on the promises that on the basis of which we bestowed our vote, our support on them. So it's also important the period, the most important period is actually the period after elections or between elections, that 5-year period, because that's where we actually have a say in holding people accountable, and where we should, as citizens in a democracy, where we should use every platform as voters, use every platform that is available to us to say, I think you need to do this. I don't think you're doing what you said you would be doing. I don't think you're delivering to the extent or to the quality that you said you would when I cast my vote. So I would like you to improve. And that's where the local activism comes in. That's where local participation in governance comes in. And that's what the Namibian Constitution allows us to, as citizens of Namibia. It actually creates that space for us, freedom of expression, freedom of association to play a role.
Yeah, if I can just cut you there. Maybe how has the citizens and the government, do you think we have maximized that space that you're just talking about? Do you think there still needs more to be done, or we still need to explore more of it?
I think there's definitely more. We are, somebody once called us a democracy, a political scientist once called us a democracy without Democrats. So, we go to the polls and we vote, and then we sit back for 5 years. And, in that 5-year period, politicians and would-be politicians, they either deliver or they don't. And then people, say, but they didn't deliver. But what did we do as voters? What did we do at local level to hold those people accountable? And that's what we should be doing in the periods between elections, is making sure through local level engagement, through local level activism, we should be holding officials accountable for the things that they promised and on which we voted for them. And people really need to understand that in a democracy, it's not just about the voting. It's also about holding officialdom accountable. So voting is just one aspect of the democratic process in a democracy. It's also what happens after the vote that is also very important.
Very, very important indeed. So we just have 5 minutes. Maybe if I can just ask, we do know that the Action Namibia Coalition is having this massive campaign with local radio stations, educating the people out there on access to information. No, we do know that this month we'll have another interview, of course. But I would just like to know what other things is First Media and Action Namibia Coalition Group doing. What are they doing, and what are the plans also with regards to this access to information and voting?
Yeah, so I mean, there are various other things as the various associate members of Action the various organizations are doing. I mean, for instance, the LAC is doing fact sheets, information sheets. The Institute for Public Policy is also producing briefings on electoral issues and so forth, and monitoring through the Election Watch project, monitoring sort of what's happening on the electoral landscape as we move closer to elections, during the elections and after the elections, and after the votes have been counted and announced and so on, the processes that follow immediately after the elections into next year. So there's a lot that different organizations that are part of the Action Coalition are doing in this space, producing information pieces. The Namibia Institute for Democracy, which is also an Action member, does voter education and voter awareness raising at local grassroots level in different communities in the country. So there's different things that different organizations do, and that Action through its secretariat supports through activities such as these, engaging with the local level community media to speak to reinforce the messages our member organizations are trying to get across at national, at regional, and at local levels. So that's what we're doing, and that's what we'll continue doing up to and beyond these upcoming elections.
Definitely. Okay, 2 more minutes. Just maybe takeaway. What would you like to say with it? With just your final thoughts on this issue.
Well, I mean, I think the important thing is to really encourage people to get out to vote. If you look at previous elections, regional and local elections, these turnouts, these have traditionally been elections of low turnouts. And that's a strange thing, because these are the elections that actually have a direct impact on people's lives at grassroots level, at regional level. And yet people have considered these elections as less significant than the national and presidential elections. And it should actually be the other way around. So I think we have to move to a situation where people turn out in greater numbers, and see these elections, local authority elections especially, as the most important elections in the country, and the elections that they really need to go out for and really need to get out and vote. So I would like to encourage, finally, people to really go out and vote locally in the local elections and in the regional elections.
Right, and with that note, we've come to the end of our session with Mr. Frederico Links. It's always a pleasure speaking to you, man of vast knowledge, equipped with the Constitution up there. And thank you very much for coming in and helping us. Hopefully, again, this month, around the 28th, we'll have another conversation regarding access to information.
Thank you, Enoch, and I look forward to it.
All right.